me make sure I'm recording. I don't want to lose that. How's everybody doing with their Earth Star? Have you guys been working with it? How's it going? Any big realizations? I'll be out of Facebook jail tomorrow. Yay. So I can be more interactive in the groups, not only when I can steal Chris's phone or log in from, we're trying to be really careful because I don't know if it's like my IP address, and I don't want to keep logging in from my computer in his Facebook because I don't want them to think it's the spammer using his Facebook and then block him too. Then we'd really be fucked. So I'll be out of Facebook jail tomorrow at 5 p.m. and then I'll be very careful as to the speed at which I share my videos. So how are you guys doing with Earth Star? How's that going? How's that feeling? What connections are you making? What realizations have you come to? So I am excited about talking about the elements with you guys. Hi, Trisha. Ashley, I've been doing the Earth Star meditation right before bed and falling asleep to it. Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Grounding into it and falling asleep to it. Why not? Claire, Claire, I saw your post this morning, but of course I was logged in on my phone. I can see everybody's posts, but I can't comment. So I was reading about your anxiety and stuff. Sorry, I just dropped my ring. I needed the Earth Star this week. Sorry, guys. My cat-night's running away. I needed the Earth Star this week. I felt quite ungrounded. Came to the realization that I've recently been looking outward for validation instead of inward. And it's powerful to even just realize that, because even just realizing that, you can start to, bring the awareness to it and realize when you're doing it and be like, oh yeah, there's that thing that we do. Exactly. It fuels the anxiety because, deep down we know that we can't find it. It's like blindly, searching for something in a dark room, and we know we're not going to find it. So, Trisha, the realization I had this week about needing the contract burning with my younger self came from my contact with the Earth Star chakra. Yes. Awesome. So did you do it? Did you do the contract burning with your younger self? Yay. You look very light and alive. You do. Awesome. I'm glad to hear that. Good stuff. I see you're typing, so I'm going to wait a second before I start talking. Now I need to do the contract burning with my daughter. That is on board for tonight. Yes. And we just moved into Sagittarius energy. So we've got a whole new, energy here at play. And, oh God, I was reading some stuff about like the next couple weeks ahead. Like, Gemini full moon and whatnot. And why nobody likes a Gemini. But let's jump in. All right. Let me share my screen with you guys. I made you guys a PowerPoint. Yes, I did. I made you guys a PowerPoint. So we are talking about the elements and the chakras. Let me move this over here. Oh, Ashley, yesterday was a shit day. My little brother contacted me in crisis and threw me for a loop. I did what I could to ground myself, but whenever he calls and needs me, it's like I go into this super protective warrior mode and it's hard to come back from. Yeah, because I'm guessing you feel responsible for him in some way or somehow for some reason. And, working on releasing that it's part of the, and there could be something karmic there too. So it's definitely something to keep working with in the Earth Star chakra as well, Ash. Because a lot of times these people that we have really deep karmic or past life ties with, we have this massively deep, crazy sense of responsibility for them. And it can be hard for us to, allow them. They have to go through their own pain and their own experience. Yeah, you raised him even though you're 2 years apart. Right. So you have like this mom thing with him and who knows what else. And it's hard to step back. And I mean, as a parent, I don't have kids, yet. So I can only imagine what it's like when you have to pull back and allow your child to go through the pain or the suffering of their own growth. So it's definitely a process, right? And very difficult. Yeah, Trisha, right. So, baby steps. Whoops, I'm jumping ahead. All right. So why do we work with let me move this down here. I just bring it up when I see it. Why do we work with the chakra or the elements? Why do we work with the elements and the chakras? And I just got a brand new book too. This book, you guys, is magical. I've only read the first couple chapters, but Essential Oils and Spiritual Practice. Awesome book. So I'm going to read a little section to you out of this because it has this great part about the elements. And I was like, oh my God, I wish I had this earlier, but that's okay because we'll talk about it anyway. We'll just improvise and throw it in. So you guys, we find the elements across, Ayurveda, across yoga, which naturally we have to talk about when talking about the chakras. But I mean, we also find them across so many other, ancient, the natives, right? We find the medicine wheel and the directions and the elements. And we find the elements in Buddhism. So these things are very prevalent across all of these older ancient traditions. So when we talk about them in regards to yoga and Ayurveda, they're often referred to as the Pancha Mahabhutas in Ayurveda, or the Tattvas in yoga. So Ayurveda and yoga are very, very, very closely linked and similar, and a lot of the same philosophies. And Pancha means 5, and Mahabhuta and Tattva are the Sanskrit words meaning element or reality. And we connect with these 5 elements as we learned last, crazy word, right? I know these Sanskrit words, I try. As we learned in the beginner course, and as we learn right away when working with the lower 5 chakras, this is where we connect with these 5 elements. So this is where I want to throw in what I read last night, because she talks about, first of all, there's a little poem here from the Mahayana philosopher Nagarjuna. He says, if a person is not earth, not water, not fire, not wind, not space, not consciousness, and not all of them, what person is there other than these? So there we go. We get that paradox. Yes, we need to find someone, because I'm really trying to learn Sanskrit and be fluent at it, and it's challenging. And Lord Shiva says in Shiva Swaradaya, creation takes place due to the tattvas, and by them it is sustained. So, from thousands of years ago, we're being told that we have this link to these tattvas. And you guys will see tattvas, you'll see it spelled Tattvas and Tattwas, just depending. The Sanskrit's one of those languages with the V and the W will often be interchanged. So, hard enough time with English. Me too, some days. Some days I'm like, I have peanut butter in my mouth, right? So, she talks about that the foundational principle for this exploration into the tattvas is that the commonly known universe and its inhabitants, including the human race, animals, plants, and minerals, are all created by and sustained by the tattvas. Although ultimately we are not them and cannot be confined and manipulated by them without our personal permission. She goes on to say the goal of this book is to further explore this paradoxical theory. So she says, many of us wrestle with a fundamental question long asked by philosophers, artists, and spiritual seekers. What are we really made of? The goddess Isis received the great secret of the projection of matter, our elemental natures, the elemental nature of the world around us, and how it is organized from the fallen angel Amniel. Plato found that space, or ether, is like a nurse to the whole cosmic order. Maya Tiwari, an Ayurvedic specialist, works, hey Carol, an Ayurvedic specialist writes, we are the air, water, soil, and light of this planet. Every grain of sand, every mountain range, every river, and every leaf contain the same elements. We celebrate nature in our very nature. The Who mused about it in their music, and in my favorite lyrical expression of the subject, musicians Kate Bush and Moby claim, we may live on in comets and stars, and we are all made of stars. You guys remember those songs, right? So according to many ancient philosophical there's that English I can't speak. Philosophical systems, including Ayurveda, they are right. Vedic wisdom teaches that everything in existence, within and without, is fashioned from the tattvas. We are all made of stars, waterfalls, flowers, sunshine, and every other substance in the universe because we share these common constituents. This is the macrocosm-microcosm relationship, as above, so below. Exactly, Ashley. We're really all made of magical shit. Yep. Trisha always sounds better in your head. So, yes, by working with the tattvas, right, our common tattvic nature, right, which is our connection to the elements, this allows us to use the resonant energy of archetypal patterns to shape our inner and outer worlds. So when we think about it, this is really a tool of empowerment. Now, especially when we can interlay the relationship with the elements with what we know about the chakras and how these things govern our behaviors and how they affect us. Oh, no worries, Carol. I'm glad you got in. Good, I was wondering. And how they affect us, and we can start to really use it as tools of empowerment, because that's the thing, right? So by working with the chakras and by working with meditation, we start to transcend this need of our ego to have this identity, right? By healing our traumas and by balancing ourselves at the level of root, sacral, and solar plexus, which we'll talk about more when we get back into the relationships of these three next week or the week after. And as we really come to balance, we stop, a couple of things happen. We stop Claire seeking outwardly, right, for the validation and the stuff that we need, right? We start to realize that we get really firm in the realization that everything we need is in here. And that, yes, validation is nice, but it stops becoming a need. And that's going to result the more you step away from the ego. And then the other thing the ego really does is which also arises from imbalances in the root and sacral and solar plexus. Because when we don't have a firm belief and connection with who we are in a healthy way, we fall into the trap of needing these identities, right? So it's like, oh, I'm a mom, I'm a Taurus, I'm this way, I'm a writer, I can't do this, right? All of these labels and these identities we put on ourselves. Now, all this does is limit us. And our ego does this because it wants us to feel safe. It needs this identity to feel safe, right? So we start limiting ourselves. And then we start reading, right? And we start exploring, and we read about things like the hero's journey, and we read, we learn the tarot, and we learn about all these different archetypes that we can, embody, and that all just show different points in the journey. And suddenly we say, oh, okay, so I can change, right? And we become more fluid and more flexible because we start to get our ego in check, and we realize that it's okay for us to shift, and it's okay for us to change, and it's okay for us to let go of behaviors, that maybe don't serve us. And it's okay for us to shift which archetype we're embodying. It's okay for us to move and relate with the world through the various chakras, depending on what it is we need at any given moment. We stop needing to have this fixed identity that says, well, this is who I am, and that's just all that it is. And, maybe that we do that in relation to how we deal with our emotions. Okay, so we're an emotional person, and we speak our emotions outwardly, and we share them with the world. Okay, but does that behavior really apply in the workplace? Is that appropriate for the professional environment of the workplace? No. So we learn how to be able to move up and down through the chakras, use the different elements to, embody whatever it is we need to call into our space at any given moment, or for our own healing as well. So if we tend towards being really flighty and ungrounded, working with the earth element is going to be powerful. If we tend on being stagnant, working with air and fire is going to, get us moving, right? So good, Claire. Yeah, it's just the more I'm reading, it's another one of those things with layers. I'm up here and I'm like, okay, I know about elements, and this is how I work with the elements. And then I start reading, and it goes deeper and deeper and deeper. And I'm like, oh my God. I have all these light bulbs going off, and the dots are all connecting, and I get really excited. So Ashley said, I thought seeking validation outside, there was a lack of anahata flow or block there. Yes, it's related to both. So it's like when we're emotionally, so, okay, let's touch on that for a second. So it all starts in the root chakra, right? We have some trauma or we're blocked there. We're not connected to the earth. We don't feel safe. We don't feel secure. So anytime we are seeking outwardly for security, of course, the origination of that is the root chakra, because the root chakra has everything to do with whatever it is we need to thrive and feel safe and secure. So that's where it's going to start. Okay. And then Claire, we all know about my root. So, and then we move up to the sacral, and the sacral is kind of like this emotional state. And remember, sacral is very childish, right? When it's blocked or it's imbalanced or it's deficient or it's excessive, it's going to be very childish and needy. Okay. And then, so that can look like a lot of different ways. Maybe it's not so much the validation. The specific thing of like the validation aspect of it, I need you to validate me, I need you to validate my feelings, I need you to praise me. That's then also going to be linked to the heart chakra, Ash. Yeah. So in other ways, you know, if it's like sexual validation, okay, that's going to more arise from the sacral chakra. If it's, you know, a need to be, and then again, it's different too. So like the need to be heard can be connected, you know, the validation and need to be validated on what you're speaking is going to be connected to the throat. So when it's like in an emotional, loving validation sense, it's going to arise from the heart chakra, right? If you constantly need to be touched and told that, you know, you're loved and need to be provided with that and have somebody validate you emotionally, that's that strong sacral heart link. Now, if it's more like, you know, you're at work and you're going to shut down if you don't get the praise that you thought you should get about a project you did, that's going to be linked to like solar plexus and root. Now, if it's like you constantly want to be validated, right, verbally and heard, you need to be heard, and that's going to be connected to the throat, coming from the root and the sacral. So does that make sense? Or okay, good, you said makes sense. Awesome. Carol, yeah, where the inner child lives, sacral, totally. That's like our inner, you want to get childish real quick? That's it, right? Foot stomping, Trisha. Exactly. What about me? Because sacral is very like the world revolves around me. Yes, depends what you're needing validation for, it seems. Right, but as opposed to relationships is exactly heart, Ash. So you ain't wrong. Working with Manipura and Anahata together has been super powerful for my validation issues. And that absolutely will be Manipura and Anahata together, because, you know, anything that we can work with, you know, at the level of the heart chakra, because the more we connect with that Aditattva, right, that inner temple in the heart chakra, that pure essence of who and what we are, and the more we really realize how infinite that is, we start to see how almost absurd it is to come out of that and be like, oh my God, I need you to validate me, right? And we start just kind of catching ourselves and also by connecting with it at the level of the heart, and we can tap into the forgiveness and the air element, like we're going to talk about today. You know, the element of air is very expansive. It's moving, it's growth, right? It's light, it's all pervasive. When we can bring that vibe to where we're getting stuck, you know, we can lighten that load and we can stop taking it so seriously, you know, when we do it. And of course, Manipura, because Manipura is exactly where we can validate ourselves, because Manipura is all about that healthy sense of who and what we are, the healthy realization of what our strengths are, being able to embody and use those strengths, and then also being able to know what our challenge points are and being okay with that. So it is, yeah, it's you know, and the validation thing goes deep, because it's so much of it has been ingrained with us over these centuries, and we've been just getting handed down, you know, this insecurity and this self-worth stuff. So I'm going to reach you guys a little bit more out of here. So the macrocosm, microcosm, right? The elements are going to be a powerful link for the macrocosm, microcosm relationship. The as above, so below. as within, so without. And this is like the core essence of what we're doing with this chakra work. You know, the only way we're going to create the world we want to see out there is by doing the work and changing within ourselves, by balancing the energies within ourselves, right? By raising the masculine, raising the feminine within ourselves. And that's how we're going to create that in the outer world. You know, we can sit around and we can complain about the patriarchy all day long, but until we honor our own feminine and masculine energy streams, it's never going to change, because what is happening, as above, so below shirt. Yes. No coincidences there. Elemental palm stones. I have the obsidian elemental palm stones. I love them. Body grid. I'm going to do it this week too. I'm going to really work with them this week too. So it's where we really get to the shining example of how, what the hell they're talking about when they're saying we create our own reality, right? So collectively, we are creating this reality we see. And the problem is that individually, we're also quick to be like, well, I don't do that. I don't oppress, you know, I'm not filled with hate. And yes, we might not be filled with hate, or, you know, to the extremes we're seeing it play out, you know, we're not all like inner Donald Trump or anything, but when we start looking at what's going on and we can start seeing within ourselves where we have been maybe oppressive of our own feminine energy, oppressive of our own masculine energy, where have we, you know, allowed this to keep playing out? Where are we at war within ourselves? Where are we aggressive within ourselves? That's what we're seeing play out in the world outside of us. You know, and then it's funny because we all start, and I'm guilty of it, we all start doing our healing work and we're like, well, why isn't the reality changing? You know, it takes a minute to catch up, right? It's not, unfortunately, it doesn't poof, abracadabra, right? So we're all healed. Can it just all catch up now? You know, collectively we have to heal too, but we're getting there, right? Baby steps. So again, that's okay, being able to identify and use the different archetypal patterns for our own empowerment. Right? And she talks about how the elements flavor our expression as individuals. Their presence affects everything from the color and shape of our eyes to our intellect and our emotional temperament. In the context of the tattvas, we can explore who we are, what we are made of, what that really means, and how we can use this understanding to live our most potent lives. Becoming aware of the tattvas, their traits, and how they impact ourself and our environment opens the door to a state of conscious self-direction. We achieve this self-directed state by focusing on the following tenets. Our personal characteristics, what we recognize as our bodies, thoughts, behaviors, and emotions, arise due to personal elemental combinations. For example, which tattvas are more or less dominant in our makeup. Our personal tattvic arrangements are based on past causation patterns, karma. So we have the ability to recognize our tattvic arrangements and to understand the ways in which the 5 great elements have collated to form the basis of our behaviors. We have the ability to skillfully use this information to consciously craft ourselves. So this was my favorite thing when I started doing my yoga teacher training and we were getting into the yoga philosophy. And I was reading about the elements and we started touching on the doshas, which you guys might be familiar with. And you start learning that the way that they looked at us was everything that was going on with us, whether it was, you know, thoughts, behaviors, emotions, whatever it was, had to do with the elements. So now imagine, right? Oh, Carol, here, it's Essential Oils and Spiritual Practice by Candace Covington. Yeah, here, let me write it over here. Candace. I just found this book and I'm so excited about it. I found it on Amazon too. And I'm going to learn more about essential oils too, because she talks about all the vibrationary state of everything. So it's powerful. So one of the things that excited me when I was studying yoga and I started getting, because I already had an understanding of the elements from like a pagan medicine wheel point of view, you know, northeast, southwest, right? Earth, water, air, fire. But when I started studying yoga and I was learning how they approach us holistically as being made up of these elements. And so imagine if you can realize, instead of attaching to specific behaviors or specific, thought patterns, like for me with anger, right? So instead of attaching to my anger as this element of, who and what I am, and oh my God, it's never going to go away. What if I approached it from an elemental perspective, and I'm like, oh, okay, now way too much fire. We need to tone down this fire, right? Let's get a little water and earth and just calm, and let's get some air. Imagine if we approached ourselves like that. How much more, willing we would be able to, very much like TCM. What's TCM? Am I having a brain fart? Should I know what TCM is? Chinese medicine. Yeah. Oh, traditional Chinese medicine. Right. Took me a minute. Yeah, it is, right. And they're the other ones. So anything with Chinese medicine, acupuncture, all of that stuff that they do works with this stuff as well. And there's something to it, because imagine if we could approach our own healing journey as that, instead of, being like, no, this thing is my behavior and I'm not giving it up, and that's just the way I am. God, we limit ourselves so much, and as we talk about our astrological makeup as well, like this comes into play. So when we think about that, it's quite empowering. So we can actively address the unconscious emotional body and mental body and arrest unhealthy causation patterns that manipulate self, because that's exactly what it does. These unhealthy karmic patterns that we've been given, these programmings, these traumas, and all these behavioral patterns that keep getting handed down to us, all they're doing is manipulating self. True self is like up here. It's like that connection that we have through Christ consciousness, that heart center connection. But that gets distorted as we scramble around down here in the third dimension, trying to figure out what we're doing and trying to make sense of all these karmic patterns we're trapped in. So it's powerful. Ashley, I just had a thought. Do you think lack of an element in our natal chart, yes, could also cause lack of flow or block in a certain chakra? Like I have no air in my natal chart, and my biggest, yes, absolutely. Oh, no worries, Carol. Kitty, is Kitty okay? No air and no water here, Trisha. Yes. So if you guys remember me mentioning last session, I briefly touched on it, because that's just something we can get so in depth into, and we didn't really have time. But yes, absolutely. So when we look at our chart and we're like, I don't have a ton of air either. I have a lot of fire, a lot of water, earth, and there's like no air. And we can then know that, okay, so this is what I'm sort of blueprinted as. So what can I do, and what can I work with to sort of shift this? It's like taking an honest inventory of what you're given, and then seeking to bring in whatever wasn't already given to you. Like that's the power of it, instead of sitting back and just being like, well, that's just the way I am and I'm going to stay that way, which is one of those ways that we limit ourselves. 6 water placements, 3 fire, all Sag, and 3 earth. Woo! I've got a lot of fire in Aries and in Sagittarius, and then I have Scorpio is around, yeah, and I have Taurus, and Cancer is another water, yeah. Like no air. I'm gonna actually relook at my natal charts today. I haven't looked at it recently, but I need to. Okay, so there we go. No, Aries energy. Oh yeah, like my Mars is in Aries, my Venus is in Aries, something else is in Aries. Yeah. I'm a fighter, all right. So just to retouch, I know we've done this, like, so the 5 elements that we're talking about are responsible for the structure of the universe, and they're the building blocks of the physical world as we know it. And we're going to touch on the platonic solids, because you can't really talk about the elements on a real level being the building blocks without kind of making that connection to the platonic solids. And everything in the universe, animate and inanimate, is made up of the 5 Mahabhutas, elements, the tattvas. And they are, you guys know them, right? So at the most subtle level, at the throat Vishuddha chakra level, we have Akasha, or ether. At the heart level, we get a little bit more dense, and we come down into the air, Vayu, then fire, Agni, at the solar plexus, Jala, water, which is the sacral, and earth, which is Prithvi at the root level. Oh, it's like my computer just went black. I was like, hold up. Mars and Venus are in Pisces. Yeah, Chris, that's Chris, man. He has water fucking all around. He's in Aries, but then he has all this Pisces. I'm like, Jesus Christ, can you tone it down with the water energy? Ether can also be called spirit, yes, because it is the closest thing. But so then when we transcend beyond ether and we kind of come up to the third eye, that's kind of like the consciousness, if you will. So ether is, yes, spirit in a sense, right? Because it is like that void almost, right? That area of creation. Platonic solids and amethyst. Awesome. I know. I'm excited to dig into those too. So like I was just saying, the density of the 5 elements increases as we move from ether to air to fire to water to earth, right? And they all originate from up here, the subtle and all pervasive universal consciousness. Again, there's my English. I can't speak today. And ether to akasha. We go from most subtle. And, you know, ether is so subtle. Akasha, ether, spirit, whatever you want to call it, is so, space even sometimes it's called, is so subtle that we can't, you know, tangibly see it, right? And then, of course, earth is the densest of all the elements. And even you guys saw this in your PowerPoint, right? And I thought this was fascinating, that when we start to even look at science and you know, molecular makeup, we see the truth of these elements. So when you look at the little, our atom here, right? Boom, boom, boom. And you think of how many of these little atom guys we have making up our body, right? All over us. And then we start looking at, okay, so akasha, ether, is the space in which the protons and neutrons occupy, as well as the space in which the electrons revolve. So for anything to exist, and Ether totally talks about this in The Power of Now, and I remember reading that book and just having the most profound aha moment when he talks about how for us to be here and exist, you know, there has to be this void, because without the void, we couldn't have the space that we exist in. So for us to even exist and move in this physical form, we have to have space. We have to have ether. We have to have akasha. So that allows them the space to move. And of course, if we didn't have the space in which the protons and neutrons could occupy and the electrons could do their thing and revolve, well, guess what? Nothing would exist, because everything that's making up this object is made up of protons, neutrons, and electrons. So in order for those things to take form and make this phone, we have to have the akasha for them to exist in. Otherwise, it would just be like, I don't know, dark matter or something. It would be some weird void of nothing, and nothing could exist there. So then we have Vayu, air, which represents the force of movement of the electrons, right? And the air element is where we can really bring in expansion. So like, you know, Ashley, for you, for me, you know, working with these this week, working with air element, expansion, you know, the breath and breathing in that expansion and working with the element of air in any other areas where we feel stuck, where we feel like we need expansion. Because just because like root is earth, sacral is water, doesn't, and we're going to get to this later on, we can bring in any elements to any chakra where we need that element. So if we look at our natal chart, for example, and we know that we're really kind of stuck when it comes to emotions, well, then maybe we bring in some water, some air, if we need to maybe expand. If we're limiting ourselves in what we do and we're ready to expand, you know, our communication skills, well, then we want to work with air in the throat chakra, stuff like that. And then fire, of course, action, you know, that's going to represent the latent energy of an atom, as well as the released energy of when an atom is broken down, because that's exactly where we find our action and our power and our vitality. Everything that fire does is about transformation, right? Oh yeah, no worries, Carol. We're happy you're here. So, and again, that's why we record it, because a lot of times there's so much information we're going through. And that's why I love for you guys to be able to just keep the classes and revisit them. Because I want you guys to revisit this, because I know for me, like if I read a book or I watch a class, I can read it 4 times, and each time I'm getting something different out of it, like something else jumps out to me. And what will be really cool for you guys is like 6 months from now, you come back on these classes and you're like, oh my God, look where I was at then and look where I'm at now, you know, and it'll serve as a reference point for you guys as you keep, you know, moving down this journey. We'll have a reunion and we'll in a year from now, let's see where we're at. All right, so then the Jala, water element, right, gives the force of cohesion that allows the protons, neutrons, and electrons to remain attracted towards each other. Cohesion and flow, because guess what? If the protons, neutrons, and electrons weren't able to be cohesive and weren't able to stick together, guess what? Nothing would exist, because it would all just be, you know, they have to be able to come together and stay together to form whatever it is they're forming, right? And then, of course, Earth contributes to the solid portion of the atom, the actual electrons, protons, and neutrons. And that's exactly where, how this chair can hold me up, because this chair, you know, is made up of enough of these elements to form a solid thing. And I perceive that there's a chair here that's going to hold me up. Okay, let me look at your comments really quick. I need some expanse in my root, so I stop limiting myself to these superhuman fears of death. Yeah, you know, too, and that's going to be working with like kind of the root crown connection as well, too, I think, Ash, because I think when we really, really connect to spirit and we really connect to our higher selves. Ashley, have you read Billy Fingers, The Afterlife of Billy Fingers? Who's read that? It's amazing. If you guys haven't read it, you should read it. On point. When I read that book, I was like, oh my God, this is everything that I thought death would be. I've always kind of had this belief around death, and the way that she writes the book is exactly what I imagined it would be. And it really, I think you should read it, Ash. I think it would be powerful for you to read it. And Claire said, I think I need to work with my sacral water. Yeah, like, so more or less you need to bring in another element to that, you know, and you guys will, so there's some journal prompts, of course, in your PDF. And by looking at those, you'll be able to list kind of where you're at in certain areas and where you can start using other elements. And this will be a great topic of conversation for us to have in the group this week. You know, as for, okay, here's what's coming up. What do you guys think? You know, we can have that conversation about what elements you can be calling in and working with. So there's one more thing I wanted to read out of here. Okay, so as above, so below, the macrocosm, microcosm. The infinitesimal magnitude of change evolves endlessly as we exchange our atoms and molecules with the elements around us. While we bask in the sun, that solar energy becomes part of our being. When we walk through a forest, the trees and moisture and the God-filled black earth become part of our energy field. Our field of energy and that of the forest and the sun are identical. And that is by Maya Tiwari from Ayurveda, A Life of Balanced. So, as mentioned before, there are several philosophies concerning the properties of the tattvas before they drop into form here on Earth. This book, however, will examine the tattvas as we experience them through the senses. So again, there's another layer to working with the chakras and the elements. The senses, of course, because as we learned, right, our root chakra, the earth element, is all about smell. The sacral and the water element is all about taste. Fire element and the solar plexus is all about sight. The heart is all about touch, and the throat chakra and the ether is all about hearing. So there's our 5 senses. So when we talk about the elements, we're also talking about the 5 senses and how they affect the human emotional spirit, the mental bodies, and the soul. By understanding and experiencing the elemental microcosm, we can become fully aware of and can work with the macrocosm. So by understanding ourselves on the most simplest level, that is exactly how we start to be able to then affect the greater level, the macrocosm. right? As above, so below, as within, so without. So by getting to the root of it, of who and what we are and what our makeup is, and learning how to work with that, that's exactly what's going to allow us to be conscious co-creators, who we are, which then also turns into what our reality is. So the same patterns are reproduced at all levels of the cosmos, from the largest scale, macrocosm or universal level, down to the smallest scale, microcosm or metaphysical level. When we stimulate an exterior environment, the macrocosm, it stirs our personal interior microcosm. When we stimulate our personal interior microcosm, it ripples out and affects the universe, the macrocosm. Once we understand the resonant energies involved, we can use them to affect matter, both internally and externally. So and then there's one last thing out here, and then I'm going to go on to the PowerPoint. So the word tattva can be translated as thatness, which can be further understood as the essence that creates the feeling of existence. Swami Satchidananda tells us in the Tantra Raja Tantra, Shakti asks Shiva, where do all the tattvas exist, in the body or out of it? Shiva replies that the tattvas permeate the entire body and mind. Everything you do and think is under the influence of these tattvas. Therefore, it is necessary to understand how the tattvas behave and in which manner they can be controlled and utilized. The 5 tattvas, like all other forms in the universe, arise from vibration. So the essence which creates the feeling of existence or inherent self is just a label describing emanations of form that helps us interpret the concepts of self in the environment. For example, what we refer to as the tattva earth does not just mean dirt, but is to be understood also as a combination of light and vibrational patterns that have collated to act like a specific set of behaviors. So we experience this tattva as the earth around us, but at the same time, it is a set of behaviors that arise internally. So when we think about that, right? Okay, I am a combination of light and vibrational patterns, a combination of the tattvas that has collated to act in the world as Lindsay, right? So when we can start looking at ourselves, right? This book is amazing. I totally just got it off Amazon the other day. I was like, I need a book that's going to help me learn more. And this one popped up. So it's good. So it's kind of mind-blowing because, you know, we all experience those people, right? That you try to have a conversation with and they're so literal. And it's like, earth, no, it's earth. And that's just earth. It's just dirt. And it's just dirt. And they have this tunnel vision, right? They do it with religion. They do it with politics. They do it with, you know, various belief systems. And the thing is when you start really practicing with this stuff and you gain the greater working understanding of what it is we're talking about, we begin to be able to transcend. And we're like, okay, you know, we have these words because they give us context, right? So if I say phone, you guys know what I'm talking about. If I say mug, you guys know what I'm talking about. But I mean, really, this is just a bunch of vibrational particles and atoms and tattvas that, you know, are collated to make a mug, and because we need something to drink out of. So when we start looking at it, it's like, okay, you start to kind of understand, sort of understand, because it's still very hard to wrap the rational and logical mind around how people can manipulate matter, right? How these people that train in these things for so long, and that you start to understand, because when you really connect with the idea that we are all made up of the same thing, why can't I just reach my hand out and have that thing come to me? Why isn't it just in my hand? I should be able to do that, right? But we have to get past the block of our logical mind to be able to do that. Yeah, Trisha, and because and it's part of the journey too, right? Because we allow them to frustrate us, and then we start to realize that it's just, that's where they're at, and we can let them be where they're at and just allow them their own space. So by working with, you know, by learning how the elements how they behave, that's exactly how and where we start to be able to work with them and master them. So naturally, let us talk about the elements on a little bit deeper of a level. So we have Akasha ether, right? It's ever present, and it, like I said, it is the space in which everything exists and acts. Without the ether and without Akasha, nothing would exist. We would all just still be in this state of void connected to spirit. So, there's the whole thing that says the sound of Om was the cosmic sound of the universe creating itself. And in order for the universe to know itself, the all to know itself, it had to create something because it was nothing. So there had to be something. And thus, the first, most simplest form of something is created. And then that pattern just continues to grow outward, the microcosm, macrocosm, until we see us living in this world as we are living it today. And who's to say that we're not all just molecules living on some other greater macrocosm, right? Maybe all of our little molecules and atoms within us are sitting around having classes on how they can do energy work. What do we know, right? I like to think about it, and I'm like, maybe we're just like cells on something else, and maybe our cells are that intelligent, and they get together and they have. So in the body, and because we're so physical, I like to talk about how the elements work with us within our bodies. So in the body, Akasha is found anywhere that there is empty space, because in order for our lung to exist, there has to be space within our body for the lung to exist, right? In order for the air to fill up our lungs and give us life and give us, nourishment and healing, there has to be empty space within our lungs, right? In tubes, in order for, the blood to flow through our veins, the lymph to go where it needs to go, there has to be space. So anything where there's openings, pores, our intestinal tract, our heart valves, our spinal column, our nerves, our blood vessels, anything where there's something is existing, there is space, so there is Akasha. And it said Akasha also contributes to the sounds of the heart, lungs, intestines, and swallowings. Because think about it. For a sound to exist, there has to be, who did we just lose? Claire. I don't know where she got. So for a sound to exist, there has to be silence, right? And for silence to exist, there has to be space for the silence to exist. And that's how we're able to perceive sounds. So Akasha is space. It is spirit. Yes, like you said, Ash. It is ether. Yes, space for sound to be created. Exactly. So all sound is transmitted through space and is related to the sense of hearing. Hence, right, the throat chakra. There's Claire. She's back. She went into the ether for a second, but she came back to us. So that's why the ether, why did it put you off, I wonder? Weird. So the throat chakra. So an ear, right, is our sense organ of hearing is the ear. And since sound is produced using the vocal cords in the mouth, these are considered to be the organ of action related to the sense of hearing. So when we talk about ether, we want to look at how it's so subtle and so pervasive, right? It comes from consciousness itself, and then it's almost like this void. It's almost like endless possibility. So what can you guys think of? Like how could you work with the element of ether? How and why would you want to work with space or Akasha, where anything is possible, right? It's kind of like the space that allows anything to exist. Breath work. Heck yeah, right. Because breath work is so much more than just breathing air. You know what I mean? We yes, it's breath work, but we're doing so much more than just bringing the air in. There's all this energy that we're not really able to tangibly perceive, The pause before action. Yes, I love that. So, you know, if we're super reactive, right, and we're super fiery and we flare up and we jump out at the world via our overactive solar plexus, maybe we can work with ether to tone that down a little bit, right? To help us connect with the pause, to help us connect with the breath. And the breath and the pranayama, right? So when we're working with breath and we're working with pranayama is more than breath, chi, life force energy, right? And if we're doing Ayurveda, that's working with ether because we're helping the movement come in those subtle meridians for creation on all fronts, manifestation work. Yes, exactly. You guys are so on point. I love it. Woo. So, all right. So there's our Akasha. So, oops, I jumped ahead. Okay, air. So Vayu, air, right, is the next less subtle, more subtle, gaseous form of matter, right? So we can't see the air, but we can feel the air. Sometimes we can, you know, smells can travel on air, right? Sometimes the air feels thick, like if it's really humid and there's a lot of moisture in the air, but we can't exactly hold it the way we can hold the more tangible elements. So all empty spaces are filled with air, but the reason that the empty spaces can even exist is because of the Akasha. So Akasha is what is holding the space, and air is what can then fill it. Like our lungs are the perfect example of this. And that's why I love that you said, you know, working with the breath work. Because working with breath work, we're working simultaneously with air and with ether. So air is mobile, dynamic, light, cold, rough, fine, subtle, dry, and exists without form, right? So when we want to, and again, this is kind of where, you know, you can start, if you want to start getting into Ayurveda and the doshas, right? The doshas are all made up of this, you know, moist but heavy or dry and light and all of these different, you know, variations that I'm not an expert on by any means. I know like this much about the doshas. But by working with the elements, if we know that we're a particular dosha, you know, and we know if we tend towards, you know, like, what is it? Oh my God, I'm blanking out. The kapha, right? So kapha is very, a lot of fluid, a lot of moisture, dense, heavy, wet. So air, yeah, pitta vata kapha. It's kapha I couldn't think of. I was like, what is it called? So if we know that we have kapha tendencies, and the thing too to keep in mind about the doshas is that we do have all of them within us, but we're going to have two that are dominant. So by understanding ourselves and knowing where we have which tendencies, that is another way that we can work with the elements, right? So air is going to flow freely throughout the body. It controls our breathing, it feeds the cells with oxygens, and helps to give movement to our biological functions. So if, for example, we're struggling with elimination, right, which is governed by the root chakra, and, you know, metaphysically and energetically speaking, that is probably trying to tell us that we're holding on to something, whether it's emotionally, whether it's mentally, whether it's physically. I mean, physically we're holding on to something if we can't go to the bathroom, yes, but what are we holding on to on a deeper level that our body is showing us that as a sign of, hey, movement, elimination, and then that's an area where we can, you know, start to work with the element of air to help with that, because air is expansive, right? So it's the movement. And it's related to the sense of touch, right? So of course the skin is the sense organ for air, and the hand is the organ of action. And that's something we'll get more into too the week we do the heart chakras and the minor chakras. So, right, if we're having problems with our hands, you know, recently I was talking to a client and she was telling me, oh my God, my hand is swelling up on my left side. And we were able to trace it back to her holding on. Careful. My cat definitely wasn't holding on to anything just now. Well, and exactly. So to the opposite as well, if it's like the other extreme, like, oh geez, like there it goes. Okay, maybe I need to, like, what's happening? I'm like purging over here. So again, that's when we can work with the more solid elements like the earth element and stuff like that. And it's always relatable on a physical level because we can connect it to the different physical symptoms and manifestations that we're displaying. And so when we talk about air, we also talk about, so when we're talking about traditional, Native American medicine, the medicine wheels, right? Air corresponds to the element of, and actually let's just, while I'm doing this, I didn't include the information on the slides, but let's just talk about the correspondences as well. So when we talk about air, right, we know that it's heart chakra. On the medicine wheel, it is the direction of east. Our shape is the six-pointed star, and the octahedron when we're talking about the platonic solids. The season of spring. Our colors are going to be yellows and greens. Our planet is Mercury. A couple of crystals, and you guys will see in your PDF, I included like a couple crystals. Of course, there's tons more. But I didn't want to make a PDF that had a block this big to put all the crystals. So these are just some of the ones I'm familiar with. We have citrine, yellow jasper, blue calcite are going to be good for air element. So when we think about how we can work with the crystals, we can work with, if we're trying to bring air into our root chakra, we want to expand in our root chakra, we can work with those crystals around our root. When Chris talks to you guys about some of the essential oils this week, you can correspond that in as well, right? Maybe you want to face east while you're doing this. Golden healer quartz, absolutely. So there's all the layers that you can work with. And now, okay, we're in a Mercury retrograde, right? So I'm wondering what that does for our air element work. I don't know. It might just slow it down. And then we have the zodiac with Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. So there's all of these different layers of correspondences that we can start to add into our work. And let's really quickly just go back to Akasha ether, because I didn't want to skip over that. So when we have the Akasha ether, we know it's the throat chakra. No, Grammarly, I don't need your help right now. Thank you. The direction, it transcends the four directions, right? So it's everything. Ether is everything. And our shape is going to be the dodecahedron, which is that massive multi-sided. And it's funny, I had a big old quartz dodecahedron that I sold when we moved out of the apartment because I just had too many crystals. So the seasons, and again, this is going to be, Akasha is going to be all the seasons, all movement, because it is all pervasive and all expansive, and it is everything, all seasons. And of course, it's also beyond color, and the planet is going to be the sun, and our crystals are going to be pedalite, danburite, clear quartz, just to name a few, right? Ashley, I know you love your pedalite. I do too. I love my danburite as well. So that's, we can work with those when we're trying to bring in this space. So imagine like gridding your body with crystals that really, resonate and call in the elements of ether and Akasha. The dodecahedron and its correspondence to spirit. Yeah. So imagine if you're working with platonic solid crystals that are in, the various crystals that correspond with the elements, you're immediately getting all these layers of tools to bring into your work. So imagine like gridding your space or gridding your body with those crystals while you do your breath work, and your meditations. I have like peanut butter tongue today. I can't talk. Struggle is real. Lucky for this, I can be quiet for a couple hours after this. I'm gonna go read my books. Alrighty, so let's jump down to now Agni, fire. So fire, Agni, is hot, sharp, subtle, fine, light, slightly sticky, and radiant in quality. So now the reason I've included these qualities in here, this is a very Ayurvedic way of looking at the elements, these qualities. when we look, by understanding the qualities of the elements, we are able to better understand how, when, where, and why we want to work with something. Digestion, right, Claire? Hell yeah. You know, so it's like if we're trying to, you know, sharply move something along, you know, and transform something, like we can call in fire, we can use fire. And of course, you know, Agni, right, Ayurveda, digestion is found in the heat and energy of the body. Everything, all metabolic processes and chemical reactions, the only reason we're able to stay alive is because of all the metabolic processes and chemical reactions that our body is constantly undergoing, right? We eat and then we digest the food through, you know, the power of the digestive fire. We digest the food, we break it down into usable energy for our body to then thrive off of. Now, if we're having digestive problems, what happens? We don't feel at our best. We don't feel vital. We don't feel well. We don't feel nourished, right? We start having all of these other problems. So the same goes for information, right? We're digesting and we're consuming information. Now, we all see these people around these days that are just like, duh. It's like, you know, hello, is anybody fucking home in there? You know? It's like you're talking to them and it's like, hello, you know, is anything getting through, or are you just like a zombie? You know, it's like zombie apocalypse. And it's my belief that it's all linked to, you know, the dulling or like non-existent energy of fire. I mean, don't get me wrong, Carol, me too. Sometimes I feel like that, absolutely. Sometimes I'm totally like, okay, what, you know, first thing in the morning, especially since like trying to not drink coffee, I struggle a little bit still. I'm working through that. And that's when I use breath work, because I know that by working, especially with like the fire breathing, right? Kapalbhati is a type of breathing you can do that stimulates energy. And it increases the fire within us, because when we can increase the fire within us, we can focus better, right? We're more alert, we're more aware. We're able to listen and say, okay, here's the information I'm consuming. Sharp, right? Fire is sharp. So think about, you know, our consciousness. We want to be sharp. We want to be alert. We want to be aware. We want to be able to look at information being lion's breath. Yes, exactly, Claire. We want to be able to look at information and be like, okay, this doesn't sound right. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to critically think and I'm going to critically assess before I take this information and I run away with it and I presume it to be true. We see it all over the internet. People share articles without even reading them, without even validating that they're truth. And that is how all of these, you know, this false bullshit propaganda gets spread, because on a collective level, there's a lot of very dull people that their fire element is just being, you know, put out. So we can work with the fire element individually, because that's exactly where we can establish, okay, what am I seeing in the world? Do I want to, you know, what am I making of this? Is it able to permeate? Am I able to make sense of this? Yes, carnelian, the caffeine of the crystal world, paired with quartz to enhance it. I love that pairing, absolutely. Working with some carnelian and quartz for fire element work, yes. Because fire is the transformational force. It promotes appetite, digestion, and metabolism. Right. Vision needs to happen for action to follow. True that, right? And that is why so many people are stuck, because they can't see, they can't make sense of what they're seeing, they can't make sense of anything, and they're just overwhelmed by what's happening around them. You know, I want to light them all on fire. Where do you think, you know, light a fire under your ass came from? There's a reason that phrase exists. And so this is exactly where it's Agni is responsible for providing luster, radiance, and color for the body, as I said right here. But also Agni is going to be responsible for providing these things on a higher level as well. You know, like why do you think they say like, oh, that person's on fire for this thing, right? When we're super passionate and we're excited, we're radiant and we're lustrous, we're like, boom, yeah, let's go. So fire is related to vision because of its qualities of heat, light, and color. It's because of the tattva energies, the vibrational energies of fire, that allows us to have heat, light and color in the world. And hence then that's our connection to the sense organ of sight. Because anytime we talk about the senses, we have to also talk about our sense organs. So our tongue, right? Our skin, our ears, our eyes, our nose, right? These are the organs that allow us to interact with and perceive these senses. Yes, Venadinite is a powerful one for motivation. I do, and I love Venadinite too. I love the way it looks. It's just different. Which exactly like what I was about to say next. So fire element, the ability to give direction and impulse, relates it to the feet as its organ of action. So if the hands, right, are the organs of air, right, because giving and receiving, then we have the feet as what is connects us to our ability to move forward. And keep in mind, we also have minor chakras in the feet. So, Venadinite, Carol, yeah, it's a good one. I have a piece somewhere, but I couldn't find it. I was trying to find it this week. So when we're stuck and we're stagnant and we're not moving forward, right? So often, right, people have sciatic pain. Usually it means we're overburdened, we're stuck, we're stagnant, and we're not taking action and moving forward. And so another way we can layer, fire is very masculine, right? Very masculine energy to fire. So our masculine energy streams can be linked with this as well. So if we're finding ourselves stuck and we're finding ourselves taking action or not taking action, right? So if you guys were talking to somebody and they said to you, okay, I'm having trouble taking action. I'm not moving, I'm stagnant. What are you guys going to connect that to? I'll challenge you guys now. This is graduate school. So someone comes to you and they're like, I can't take any action. I'm stuck. I'm stagnant. Manipura stagnation. Yep. Good. What else? So top level, first thing, red flag. Yeah. Manipura. Okay, Ashley. Yeah. Bringing some air into Manipura. Because why? Air is expansive. Yeah, Carol. Solar plexus. Ashley, movement. So what else? Air. What other element you want to work with to stimulate some movement? Water, yeah, but on a more fire, yeah, Ashley, on a more potent level, fire. So Claire, water is good for movement when it comes to, you know, releasing, cohesion, fluidity, flexibility. But for really stuck, I think calling in the element of fire, where do you want to go? Air, motivation, fire. Yeah, right. So direction, okay, air, where do you want to go? And then motivation, fire. Love it. Emotional movement, I think water is good. Right. So then you got to dig a little deeper and kind of figure out where they're stuck. Now, if they're stuck with like actually taking action and like, okay, not moving forward, I'm going to say fire. Right. If it's emotional stuckness, I'm going to say water for sure. If it's kind of like, I just don't know where I want to go. Yeah. Air and ether for sure. You guys are so on point. How about earth if they're fearful? I think connecting to the earth element is good if they're fearful, but I think too much earth, they need to be careful if they're really fear-driven. Too much earth, they're going to get real stuck, cozy, and comfortable in that earth element because now it's like a safe little cocoon. So I think working out a balance of earth and, you know, fire to promote action is powerful. For someone who's really fear-based, I think the combination of earth and fire together would be potent. And you know, maybe working with the water to get the healing going. So finding out what it is that they're so fearful of and digging into the root causes of that fear, working with water for gentle, you know, healing around that topic, and then working with earth and fire to stimulate a sense of connection to the earth and then grow that faith, grow that trust, and then fire to light that fire under their ass and get them moving. Because guess what will get somebody out? You burn somebody's comfort zone down around them. They'll get out of that comfort zone real quick. Right? That's my new meme of the session. I'm going to burn down your comfort zone. Hashtag hug your chaos. We burn down comfort zones. Ah, shit. So feet, right? So when people are coming to, and I would thank you for doing it. So when people come to you and they're like, oh my God, I have sciatica, or oh my God, I'm having all this leg pain, right? You can start to explore with them. Are they not moving forward? Because when we're afraid, we keep ourselves blocked from moving forward. And I like this guy that I included in the PowerPoint here, because he's like a little fire magic guy here, like jumping all over the place inside of our radiant energy pattern for the Manipura chakra. New mission statement: we break down comfort zones. Love it. So then our correspondence is for fire. You guys know solar plexus. The direction is going to be south. It's 11:11. Everybody, take a moment. The inverted triangle, right? We see the inverted triangle in our Muladhara yantra, and then the tetrahedron for the platonic solids. The season is going to be summer. Our colors are reds and oranges. The planet, oh my God, I wrote planet Aries. Mars. Whoops. Sorry, guys. I have a typo in your PowerPoint there. I wrote Aries instead of Mars. Sorry about that. Some of the crystals are fire agate, carnelian, and lava stone. Think about it. It's coming up from the earth. It's made from fire. Obsidian, of course, any of those, any fire crystals, you guys know. And our zodiac is Aries, Sagittarius, and Leo. So we can work with, different zodiac signs. And this is a way that we can layer in, okay, where's the moon? What is the moon doing? Oh, the moon is in Gemini. So I want to work with some air, elementals. And it's kind of something that gets overlooked because I think a lot of people don't really talk about working with the elements, but it's something we can explore. So when we look at, where the different planets are, we can start to assess, oh, okay, well, that would be a powerful night for me to sit in a meditation based around this element. And it's really where you get to start taking charge of your own healing and your own journey. Right? So, okay, running out of time. Water element, which I totally messed up this slide as well. It says Agni fire up here. Whoops. So water, Jala. Its descriptions are, I love working with the elements. It's part of my everyday practice. Good. I love that, Trisha. So good. I hope we're going to have some really awesome conversations this week and we can share all of our what we do. So water is liquid, sticky, soft, cold, compact, heavy, and moist in quality, right? So if we have tendencies, of dryness, of overheating, of hardness, right? Water can really be where we soften. If air can expand us, water can really soften us. Water, it constitutes the fluids of the body, right? That's what we know. The sacral chakra governs all of the fluid elements of the body and represents the force of cohesion. So, as well as the abilities to attract and change that are associated with water. Because when we think about water, what does water do? Right? What does water do when it runs into a block? If it runs into a rock, it flows, right? It will smooth down granite boulders. It will cut its way through canyons in the desert to give us beautiful, awesome features of the earth. It will flow around, right? Water has the ability to adapt and to change and to move because it is soft and it is flexible. So my constitution requires a ton of water intake. Yeah. And knowing that is powerful because that's going to help you feel good in the world and help you feel. But no, that's so appropriate, Ashley. It's just something we often don't want to talk about. Sacral chakra, your natural lubrication. Hell yeah, that's all part of it. So if we're struggling with that, we can start looking to, am I having a block here? Maybe I need to work with the water element in my sacral chakra. How can I move this? Maybe I need to bring in some air and expand on it. Carol, yes, it ebbs and flows. Exactly. Trisha, cleanse and heals. Yes. So water is very feminine and very gentle, right? So it can offer us a very gentle, feminine approach to our healing. Because if you're like me, you take everything by storm. And I've come to realize that I don't have to take everything by storm, especially my own work. I can be gentle with myself, and that then allows me to be gentle with others, because not everybody responds to the burning down of their comfort zones. Some people need to be flooded out of their comfort zone with water, right? Warm, gentle water and a freaking floaty to get them out of it. So we're all different. And by understanding this, it helps you guys too, as you move along your own paths and start exploring sounding a tidal wave. Yes, either that or we drown them. Well, right, that too, because so sometimes it's too much, right? And it's so related to our emotions, and it's very easy. We typhoon down your comfort zone. Yeah. my swimming floaties, right? So when we look at how we are with our emotions, it can be a very clear picture of how we are with the water element. So if we're overly excessive with our emotions, right, and overly outward, we want to work to tone down the water element, because too much water is what does that, right? Chris with all his Pisces and all his emotions are just everywhere all the time. And me, it's like a lot of my water element is Scorpio, so it's like this deeper water element energy that I need to bring in air to allow it to expand. So water provides the bodily fluids, like we know, right? And I said that in here. So Ashley, you said it, right? The association sense organ is the genitals, which are very closely linked in function to the tongue. Without water, neither the tongue nor the genitals can function properly. So, those are the two organs, right? We have these sense organs, which are very much pleasure organs, right? We get a lot of pleasure out of our mouth through eating, right? When something is good, and a lot of pleasure through our genitals. Those are our two areas of pleasure. And that's why they're the two areas to very quickly show us when we are imbalanced or having trouble, and we're needing sex for validation, or we're eating, or we're emotionally eating, or we're seeking sex to feel good about ourselves, right? All of those things that you see the links. Carol, I'm a Pisces too, can be very up and down sometimes. Yeah, so my water is all Pisces and Scorpio, no Cancer. Yeah, mine is Scorpio and Cancer. So I'm all like, I'm going to take it in here and hide in my shell. Get the fuck away from me. So that, and then taste. So it's good for the sense of the perception of taste. And we think about taste, right? Taste is so subjective, because how is it that, one person can love the taste of something, someone else can hate the taste of something? And it just shows you how linked this is to our deeper subconscious and unconscious programming. And then so our correspondences for the water, sacral chakra, the direction is going to be west. Our shape, as we learned with this Svadhisthana yantra, is our circle with the crescent moon, but also the icosahedron. Our season is fall, which we're in right now. Our colors are going to be blues. The planet is the moon. So a couple of crystals are aquamarine, moonstone, and chrysocolla. And our zodiac signs are Pisces, Scorpio, and Cancer. So then our earth element, Prithvi, right, represents the solid state of matter. Earth is heavy, hard, stable, compact, rigid, unctuous, and dense in quality. So if someone comes to you and they are just, or within yourself, you find that you just have all of this heaviness, all of this hardness, you tend towards so much stability that you just can't get moving, you're rigid, right? Larimar and Sodalite, yes. Oh, amethyst, I believe that, because amethyst is very related to the mind and the third eye. So I see how it can also be linked to water element, because that's subconscious link as well. So someone tells you, I'm so rigid, dense, and I feel so limited. What element would you guys tell them to work with? Water, air, yeah, water, yeah, because water is going to be, and this would be a good one to kind of figure out what person are they? What type of person are they? Are they do you need some gentle, water movement? Do you need to float to kind of come to your movement, or are you ready to just expand, Because air is going to be the powerful one for expansion, but maybe there's some comfort zones that need to be burned down in between them. So, I think sometimes it comes down to figuring out what the cause of them being that way is. If it's just kind of their makeup due to, their astrological blueprint, then yeah, maybe we can just jump right into air. Now, if there's someone and they're just dominated by all this fear and trauma, and that's why they're stuck in this place of, Claire, I would also applaud them for their self-awareness and their limitations. Absolutely. That's always going to be step one. Great job for seeing where you're at. Absolutely. Because I know so often we have to lead them to it. But right. So, and then if they're kind of, if this is their safety zone, then maybe we want to do some gentle water movement first, then maybe some fire to burn away with because a lot of times, if they haven't even acknowledged that something is blocking them, they're not going to be able to burn it away. So in that case is where you might want to work with some gentle water element first, right? Does that make sense to you guys? Yeah. And then finally, of course, space and ether, because that's really going to bring in the expansion. Right, Trisha, I'm heavily grounded. Air works for me to move to action. Right. And me too now, Trisha, me too. I'm very grounded and I can work with air to move to action. But shoot, 10 years ago when I was all blocked, I really had to bring in that fire to clear out those things first. So I like that you said that. Then hand them the floaties and matches. Go off Morpheus on them. Yes, that is my ultimate aim. To be like red pill or blue pill. We're going to burn it all down. So it's at Earth, right? Earth is related to our sense of smell, the nose. The nose is the sense organ through which we perceive smell. And again, senses are perceptions, like I just mentioned with taste. So we smell something, I like it, you hate it. What is that but a perception? So that's a very powerful way to start looking at how you see the world. So now if you're in a room with 5 of your friends and one of you loves rose, somebody else hates it, somebody else feels okay about it, you're not going to be like, I can't believe you. You just suck as a person because you don't love the smell of rose the way that I love the smell of rose, right? Yet, when it comes to the way we perceive the world on greater levels, we often see people doing just that. Someone's not going to hate someone else because they don't like tacos, where someone else thinks tacos are the greatest tasting thing. So again, this gives us a very real example of how different our perceptions are and how our perceptions don't have to define, who we relate with. The action organ of the earth element and the root chakra is going to be the anus, right? Where we get rid of everything letting go of it, right? Because we have to be able to let go of what no longer serves us. So again, if you're working with somebody or you yourself are, taco hate is blasphemous. If you're finding that someone is can't let things go, maybe that's too much earth element. So that's where you can start bringing in the fire, bringing in the air, right? So very quickly, I want to talk about there's just our examples of the platonic solids. So we have our tetrahedron here, which is linked to the fire element, which, because we see the triangle in the solar plexus yantra. The hexahedron is related to earth, also known as the cube, and we see the square in the yantra for the root chakra. The octahedron is our air element, right? And it's interesting because it's made up of triangles again, right? And then we have the dodecahedron, which is our ether connection, and our icosahedron, which is our water connection. And I love this image that I found down here because I love that it kind of throws in, it kind of makes you see the whole Kabbalah tree of life. You got the two intertwining snakes that we talked about last week with our nadis and the flow of energy. So it just really goes to show you just how much all of these old Ash traditions are interrelated. All right. And then lastly, what I want to touch on, and we're going to talk about this more this week, but of course, we're also going to have a whole week of mudras, but I'm going to touch on the mudras before we finish. So how do we work with the elements? And this is in your PowerPoint too, guys. We work with each element and the chakra that corresponds to it, right? Like we were kind of touching on when I was asking you guys, what would you do in this case? What would you do in that case? So we work with fire across any chakra that needs action or a boost of energy. We bring water into any chakra where we need healing, cohesion, or fluidity. We bring earth in where we need stability. We can use earth to calm erratic or excessive energy. We can work with air for expansion and movement. We can work with ether to bring in purity, flow, creation, and connection, right? And you can start by working with each element upwards through each of the chakras to kind of get a feel of how and where you are. And when you're able to link the behaviors with the chakras, so somebody tells you, okay, I have anxiety, or oh God, I'm nervous, or I have this physical health problem showing up, when you can relate that thing back to the chakra that governs that area, that's going to help you start to establish which elements you can be working with to help this. I see a kitty tail down here. And then of course there's affirmations, stones, breath work, pranayama, visualization, color, essential oils, which is all the stuff we're going to talk about this week. So Chris will talk about essential oils. I'm going to talk about crystals, and you guys have affirmations and journal prompts in your PDF. So quickly, and I'm going to do a live stream on this on Tuesday for you guys, but very quickly, mudras, because we're also going to spend a whole week on mudras, right? But there are mudras for each element. And I want you guys to understand, when you look at your hand, fire element, air element, akasha, ether, earth, water. So that's why sacral chakra, right? When you're working with the water element, a way you can bring into, you can focus on a specific chakra and do the water mudra, which you see down here on the right. And I'll actually post these images to the groups for you guys too, so that you have them. So water, when you're trying to call in water, think thumb to pinky. When you want to work with the earth element for stability, Prithvi mudra, ring finger to thumb. Vayu mudra to bring in air, looks like this. All right, when you're trying to work with akasha, ether, middle finger. And then fire, so do you guys see the one up here where the earth finger is down and the thumb is over it? So that's going to be a fire mudra. Another way you can work with fire is like the thumbs up, like we worked with when we learned the sacral chakra. So fire, because your thumb is your fire. Think about it, right? Your thumb is your action finger, right? You could make do without another finger. Without a thumb, that's like shit. I can't pick anything up. I can't, right? So think about action. That's your thumb. So anytime you're trying to work with fire, and by putting your thumb over the earth finger, you can call in the fire element. So again, we'll talk a little bit more about mudras this week as related to the elements. And then of course, we're gonna have a whole week on the mudras, which I'm really excited about because, yes, Claire, I think that's absolutely right. The thumb being indicative of ego in yoga philosophy and in Kundalini. I think that's absolutely right. I'm gonna look it up, but I think that's 100% right. Trisha, my dog Zeus, just got on my lap and has no issue using his action organs. Farting, I know. Dogs in there farting, right? It's hilarious. You can learn so much from dogs. So that's about enough out of me. I mean, there's lots more I can say, but once I'm allowed back on Facebook Live, learn to just let go. Exactly that. What is going on with our pets today? I know. So I'll post these photos of the mudras in the group so that you guys have them. Tuesday, we'll do a live stream. And we'll chat more about mudras, and we'll chat about crystals, and we'll chat about whatever else you guys want to hear about. And then I will have your meditation to you guys shortly. And I want to get it to you guys over there in Europe before you go to bed, Carol and Veronica, so that you guys can work with it tonight if you feel called to do so. So any questions that you guys have about anything or anything else you guys want to say, or is everybody all good? Thank you, as always. Let's stop the screen share here. Claire, Ashley, thank you. Thank you. Trisha, you got any questions? Carol? And everybody who didn't join us live and is catching this as the replay, we of course missed you. Yes, this was super fun for me to talk about. I think we're gonna have a lot of fun this week working with the elements. I've already coming up with some challenges for you guys that I'll be posting in the group later in the week. So awesome, good. I'm glad you guys loved it, and I hope you guys really enjoy working with the elements. So thank you guys for joining me, of course. Thank you for showing up. Much love to you guys. I'm going to unmute you so we can all say bye. Why can't I unmute you, Ashley? Mute. Trisha, unmute. Much love to you guys. Have a beautiful day. Thank you. Thank you for letting me teach you.
Thank you.
Have an awesome day.
Bye.
Bye, ladies.
Bye.
Bye.